Tonight's topic is about keeping our bed undefiled. We have to keep our bed undefiled. Okay, this is actually the seventh commandment, right? We've been talking about the 10 commandments of God, and tonight we're talking about keeping our bed undefiled. What does it mean? Of course, it's not about tidying up our bed. We all know the seventh commandment. What is it? Exodus chapter 20, verse 14, it says, "You shall not commit adultery. You shall not commit adultery." That's what it means by keeping our bed undefiled. Okay, let's see. This is the formula given by the scriptures. The only sexual relationship that is allowed biblically. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. This is the only sexual relationship that is allowed biblically. We have to keep in our mind Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. So as we can see right here on the screen, Adam and Eve. Okay, it's not Adam and Steve. It's Adam and Eve in the garden, right? So we have to be very careful. We have to watch out for the person we sleep with, because it is written in the book of Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4. It says, "Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral." So in other words, that when we get married to a woman, because I'm a man, or if you're a woman, you get married to a man, we have to honor the marriage itself, because God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. Adultery and its reward. It's very obvious in Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10. It says, "If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress are to be put to death." Of course, we're not doing this anymore by ourselves, but sooner or later, the rewards are coming. And if we are one of the adulterers, be very careful, because whatever it is, the punishment is waiting ahead. So we all know, biblically said, that the adulterer and adulteress are soon to be put to death. Maybe not now here on earth, but later they will get their reward, which is the eternal death when Jesus comes. So we have to know that the Bible is totally against adultery. Here comes the question. It's quite phenomenal nowadays that Christians are considered more free in terms of sexual lifestyle portrayed by many Westerners, right? I remember when I had discussion with a Muslim, okay, long ago, when the discussion got heated somehow, and I tried to like go away because I don't like debate anyway. But suddenly, out of nowhere, he said it to me loud. He said that, "Okay, if you're talking about our prophet, now let's talk about you Christians, because you Christians live freely. You can see what's going on right now in the United States. They are so free." And then I said to him, "Yes, most of them are Christians, but that's not what the scriptures teach us." That's what I said to him. Okay. And here comes the question again, right? Did Jesus teach less strictly about the concept of adultery? Because in fact, right now, especially in the West, we know that many Christians are there, and it seems like they accept the concept of living freely, open relationship, so they can live or they can sleep with whoever they like. Here comes the American views on marriage. Cohabitation. Cohabitation means that when you live with someone, okay, to try it out, or maybe just want to live together with that other person, without getting married with that other person. And we can see right here, person of adult saying it is acceptable for an unmarried couple to live together. This is surprising. You can see 69% of Americans, they say that even if they don't plan, this couple, they don't plan to get married, but 69% still say that it's okay. It's still acceptable if they live together. Remember, without getting married, right? And 16% said that only if they plan to get married, and 14% only said that it's never acceptable. Okay, so you can see that's why many people, from other religions consider that, as if like Christians are less strict about this adultery concept. Okay, but is it true that Jesus taught less strictly about adultery? Let's see what Jesus teaches in the scriptures. Matthew chapter 5, verse 27 to 32. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. This is quoted from Jesus himself. But I tell you that anyone who looks at woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It has been said, he continued, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. So it's clear that, Jesus came to this earth not to lessen the impact of the law. In fact, Jesus came to this world to show what it meant when God gave the seventh commandment, part of the 10th commandment. So the question before stating that as if that Jesus came here and, make it less strictly about the concept of adultery, it's totally wrong. In fact, Jesus condemned hypocrisy by stating that even by looking at someone lustfully, we have already committed adultery. Put it in your mind, okay? Maybe long ago, at the time of Moses, maybe Moses didn't say it like, but Jesus came to this world and Jesus stated to everyone that what the Father meant by giving the seventh commandment part of the 10 commandments is that even by looking at someone lustfully, that means that you have already committed adultery. As we all know, Jesus condemned hypocrisy. So again, it's not true, right? In fact, when we think about woman or when we have the concept of adultery in our mind, that's the moment when we break the commandment. Adultery can start even in our mind. This is not what I said, but this is what Jesus himself said. So it is totally wrong when the Muslim, when he met me the other day and he said to me that as if like all the Christians are less strict about this. No, we are much stronger than that because Jesus taught us not to have that kind of dirty mind even in our mind. Matthew chapter 19, verse 7 to 9. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wife because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. So if we pay attention to the previous passage, as if like the man is never going to be considered adulterer, only the woman when the divorce took place, okay? But in here, it's pretty much clear that here, Jesus furthermore states that a divorce has never been God's plan. First of all, he highly respects a marriage. We must know that, okay? Because it is also written in another verse saying that whatever God unites can never be broken apart. Okay, so Jesus states that a divorce has never been God's plan. Put it in mind. And again, he condemns adultery, okay, which is the only excusable reason for a divorce. Okay, I put it in capitals. The only excusable reason for divorce. However, as what I said just now, forgiveness is still the best option after all, which means that divorce has never been God's plan. I remember when my wife and I, before we got married, so we had a counseling session, and our pastor said to us that even if any of us, God forbids, but even if any of us like commits adultery, forgiveness is still the best option after all. Okay, that's the best option. That's what the heaven or what God offers us, which is to forgive our partner. However, if we cannot take it anymore, well, that's the only excusable reason for a divorce. Remember, I put in capitals so that we always put in our mind that's the only excusable reason. If it is because our partner is abusive, well, that's according to the scriptures, still, we cannot divorce. According to the scriptures. I didn't say that. That's what the scriptures say. And then again, another point is that a man who divorces his wife, not because of sexual immorality, and marries another woman is also considered adulterer. So not only a woman who is going to be considered adulteress, but also a man who just divorced his wife, not because of sexual immorality. So be careful if you're married and somehow you have a problem with your wife, okay, and you cannot take it anymore, and not because of sexual immorality that is conducted by your wife, and then somehow you want to divorce her, remember, you are considered adulterer and you are making your wife adulteress as well. So remember, why is it like that? Because a divorce has never been God's plan. So if you haven't got married, remember, you have to be very careful when you pick your partner. Be very careful. You have to be close to God and you have to pray hard that God will show you which one should be your partner for the eternal life. But what I'm telling you, it is very important. If you happen to already got married, so remember that we cannot just divorce easily like that. It is so saddening, I can say, when we can notice around us so many people just because of simple matters or whatever it is, they just easily divorce with their wives or with their husbands just because of simple matters. And again, brothers and sisters, according to the scriptures, it shouldn't be that way. That is never acceptable. Okay? The only excusable reason for divorce is only adultery. But still, as I said in here, I pointed out on in the second one here, forgiveness is still the best option after all. How can we avoid adultery? Let's see Genesis chapter 39, verse 7 to 12. Okay, this is the famous story of Joseph, right? A young man named Joseph, a man of God. Genesis chapter 39, verse 7 to 12. It says, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph. We're talking about Potiphar's wife. Potiphar is the master of Joseph, if you don't know this story. But I hope that all of you, most of us know this story. Anyway, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. But he refused. He said, with me in charge, Joseph told Potiphar's wife, his master's wife, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you. Why? Because you are his wife, said Joseph. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? That's what Joseph said. And what happened? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, Joseph still refused to go to bed with her, and look at here, or even be with her. One day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. So, what lessons can we get from Joseph, a man of God? First of all, we have to be close to God and know for certain that sinning against God does offend him so much. We cannot have such conscience if we are not close to God. You know, Joseph is a man of God, as I said, and he knows very well that if he did this kind of wicked thing, if he did this sin, it would be so offensive to God, his God, our God. So, brothers and sisters, if we are not close to God, if only Joseph, we're not close to God, we all could somehow predict what would happen to him, because he would just try to, okay, just maybe he could just try it out, and then after that he just play with fire, and then without knowing what would happen in the future. And we all know it probably would take place, which is he would commit the adultery. However, he said no, right? He said no. Look at this. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? He could have this kind of conscience because he's close to God. Remember that, brothers and sisters. So if you and I were not close to God, then we're going to, play a little bit with the situation, and then without realizing it, that we are actually being entrapped by Satan himself. Let's see the second one. Not only that he refused to go to bed with her, look at this. He didn't even want to be with her. He didn't want to play fire, right? Because he's afraid of getting burned. Notice that Joseph even ran away when Potiphar's wife grabbed him by his cloak, right? Don't think that we are strong. Stay away from the temptation whenever you can. The moment we think that we are strong, that's the moment when we fall. Be very careful, brothers and sisters, especially when we are talking about the adultery. Wow. Be very careful. We might play a little bit with our feeling. Oh, I'm just trying to be nice with that girl, and then I'm just trying to get closer with her. And I know that I'm a man of God and I'm not going to do such wicked thing. So I just play with fire a little bit, right? And sooner or later, I'm going to be trapped. And you know what's going to happen? I'm going to fall and I'm going to commit adultery. So be very careful. We have to put in our mind that even Joseph, a man of God, what did he do when Potiphar's wife grabbed him by his cloak? He ran away and he left his cloak, he left his robe in Potiphar's wife's hand, right? And even before that, remember, he didn't even want to be with her. He didn't feel comfortable together with someone else's wife. Put in our mind. So we have to be very careful, because Satan is smart, especially to all men out there, including myself. We have to be very careful. We cannot be confident, because Satan knows exactly what our weakness is. We can see the illustration here. Joseph just ran away. He didn't stay there. He didn't say to himself that, okay, I'm a man of God. I always pray to God, and I know God is going to, control me. God is going to take care of me. I'm not going to do such thing. Even though she's with me here, she's touching me, but God forbids, I'm not going to do that. He didn't do that. You know what Joseph did? He ran away. All right. So that's a great lesson from Joseph, a man of God. How about fornication? Fornication. All right. This is a good term that comes to people's mind nowadays, especially in the United States, in the West, right? Because this is still like a taboo thing in the East. Merriam-Webster Dictionary said that fornication is a consensual sexual intercourse between two persons or two people not married to each other. So no matter what status you have, whether you are married or not, but if you live together, that means that you are doing that fornication. Same principle, brothers and sisters, same principle, just like the adultery. Yet it has been made different in the world nowadays. Okay. And fornication is pretty much related to what we call cohabitation. Cohabit here means to live together as or as if a married couple, according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Okay, so when when someone lives with another person and they're not married, but they live there as if like they're a married couple and they even sleep together, and that's what we call cohabitation or fornication. And nowadays in the West, as what we learned before, it has become something natural or something not natural but something normal. Many people say that okay, they're trying to make up an excuse, saying that okay, marriage is a tough life. Okay, I don't know whether I'm going to be with her forever. I have to see her characters first. Okay, let's try it out. How about if we live together first? Let's see whether it can work well or not. But if we cannot go through, so that means that we have to break up. As easy as that. That's what most people in the West think, and that's why it brings a bad name, about God to other people. Let's see more. In 1 Corinthians 6 verse 18, it says, "Get away from non-marital sexual relationship." As simple as that. If you are not married, you cannot have sex. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. So when we do other bad things, we do outside of our body. But when we do sexual things, that means that we are doing to ourselves, to our body, which is the temple of God. And that is very, very bad. So that's why Apostle Paul is clear right here, asking us to flee. Okay, not to walk away only, but to flee. Get away from sexual immorality. Okay, some people say that, okay, but I live with her, but she doesn't belong to someone else. Okay, that's what we call the cohabitation, right? Fornication, but it's still the same principle. If she or he is not your partner, you're not married yet, we are not supposed to have sexual relationship. Put it in mind. In fact, sexual immorality, okay, in the Bible, in the scriptures, many times that phrase is used with sometimes fornication, sometimes sexual immorality. Let's say, for example, 1 Corinthians 5 verse 1. 1 Corinthians 5 verse 1, it says, "It is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that even pagans do not tolerate. A man is sleeping with his father's wife." Okay, I want you to pay attention to sexual immorality. In there, the phrase sexual immorality actually comes from the word porneia. Okay, porneia. And in other verses, in fact, multiple verses in the Bible, porneia sometimes translated sexual immorality, sometimes translated fornication. Okay, that means sexual immorality is equal to fornication, because sexual immorality, which means that it is not accepted, right? It is not accepted sexually. Okay, and fornication also, just like what we're talking about, cohabitation. I, live together and even sleep together with someone who is not my wife, even though I'm single, for example. That's what we call fornication, and it's still unacceptable. So sexual immorality is equal to fornication. Let's get further. This is my point. The biggest source of porneia or sexual immorality, remember sexual immorality is translated porneia, is porneia itself. This is some kind of word play. But why I'm telling you porneia is important, the hot topic that I'm talking about right here, because the original Greek of sexual immorality or fornication, as I said earlier, is porneia, right? And this porneia is actually the root of English terms pornography. You get that? This is according to, you can see right here, Greek dictionary, okay? 4202, porneia, the root of the English terms pornography, which is derived from pornao, to sell off, selling the body, okay? According to Merriam-Webster, pornography is the depiction of erotic behavior, as in pictures or writing. And what is the intention? Intended to cause sexual excitement. So again, look at the title up there, right? The biggest source of porneia, or the biggest source of sexual immorality, is porneia itself, or pornography. And in fact, as I said earlier, porneia is the root of the English terms pornography. Stop porn culture. You can see these are the facts about pornography. Age 11, the average exposure age to pornography. So you can imagine 11-year-old kid knows pornography, right? 116,000 daily requests for child pornography. $3,000 is being spent on porn. Top porn search term in the United States. It's, it's not exciting anymore if we see the adults. Let's find out about teens. You can see there. People are looking for teen pornography. And 4 out of 5 16-year-old boys and girls regularly access porn on the internet. Wow. You can see the porn culture nowadays has spread around the world. More about pornography. This is very interesting. Look at that, the first one. 43% of Christian men, do you imagine? 43% of Christian men and 11% of Christian women say they were first exposed to pornography before the age of 12. Okay? Before the age of 12, you can imagine they were exposed to pornography. 64% of religious men and 15% of religious women view pornography at least once a month. Can you imagine 64% of religious men? Now you can imagine if non-religious men, right? 55% of married men, listen, married men, just like me, say they view pornography at least once a month. And we can compare to non-married men, 70%, which is higher. 25% of married women say they watch pornography at least once a month. And we can see this fact, pornography has become a big issue in our society. 2 Timothy 2, verse 22. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord out of pure heart. Brothers and sisters, flee the evil desires of youth. That's what the scriptures advise us. However, the world has come to us and has promoted pornography. The depiction of erotic behavior, what? To cause us sexual excitement. When the Bible says that we have to flee the evil desires, we have to run away, okay, from the desires, from the lustful matters. But the world has offered us pornography to make us, on the other hand, the other way around, to cause us excited sexually. So we all know which side we have to take. Marriage, brother and sister, is the solution to promiscuity. Promiscuous person means when he or she doesn't care about sexual relationship and he or she can sleep with any man or any woman. Promiscuous person. However, of course, we all have already learned that the Bible is against promiscuous matter. That's why we have marriage. And marriage is the solution to promiscuity. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 8 and 9. Now to the unmarried and the widows, I say. Who said this? Apostle Paul. It is good for them to stay unmarried as I do. All right. Yes, because if we dig in the Bible, it says that when we don't have couple, we don't have partner, of course, we don't, do nothing about it. But of course, we have to do something useful, which is to worship God and even to surrender everything to God. Okay. That's why some people have the gift. They can remain single till the end of their lives. Okay? Some people have that, but some other people, they just don't have the gift. But because the community asked them to remain single, so they just try to remain single. And I don't want to offend anyone, but bad thing happens at the end because actually they don't have the gift, but they are forced to be that way. And so they cannot take it. And what happens after that? There are so many sexual abusive happening going on, around us, right? Because they pretend as if like they can take it, they can keep themselves pure, but actually they have the desire inside them. Listen to what Apostle Paul said. It's good for people to stay unmarried as I do, if you have the gift. Remember that. If you have the gift to remain single. But, listen to this carefully. If they cannot control themselves, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with patience. Which means, brother and sister, if you are single right now and you have the lust, you have the desire to have that kind of thing, to sleep with someone else, it's better if you get married. Yeah. For the past few years, I've already heard some reports from the churches, I'm sorry to say this, like, for example, okay, but this is not example, but this is true. It's based on true story. Some Catholic churches in the United States and also in some parts of the world saying that actually there's hidden cases, right? When the pastors, they did some bad things, with the kids or maybe with the nuns or, yeah. I don't want to offend anyone, but that's what happens when you are forced not to get married. As I told you before, some people have the gift to remain single. But if you and I, are single and then we're still looking around for, let's say for a woman, see, men around, or maybe for the men looking at women, and it's better for us to get married, right? It is better to marry than burn with patience. So again, marriage is a solution to promiscuity. Okay? 1 Corinthians 6, verse 9 and 10. Or do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor, listen, men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. So talking about our bed, keeping our bed undefiled, not only about the sexually immoral, not only about the idolaters or adulterers, but also about men who have sex with men. It's still connected to the seventh commandment. Because as I said in the beginning of this session, that again, I'm telling you, the only acceptable sexual relationship in the Bible is between a man, one single man, and one single woman, and they got married and they can do that. Apart from that, nothing is tolerable. Okay, and in here, men who have sex with men, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend anyone, but the scriptures say, look at this. Here, again, with other sinners here, they will not inherit the kingdom of God. But what's going on in this world nowadays? Look at this, mass gay wedding in Israel. This is last year, if I'm mistaken. Yes, last year, right? Because in Israel, it's still forbidden, it's not really legal, but then some people, they did protest And some couples, they had a mass gay wedding in Israel, in Tel Aviv, as a form of protesting the government to legalize, again, to legalize same-sex marriage. It's really bad in Israel, brother and sister, right? But still, many clerics, many religious leaders still against that, because it's it's not it's not the way it is. And everybody knows, especially if they read the Torah, they read the scriptures, they know that gay wedding, of course, is not acceptable. However, these people, they did that, all right? Few couples, 30 something couples, if I'm not mistaken, as a protest to the government, so that the government would think about legalizing same-sex marriage. Here, this happened 5 days ago. Yes, 5 days ago. YouTube labels John MacArthur's sermon hate speech after he said God made us male and female, right? Brother Hartanto several times, right, actually posted John MacArthur in our group, and his sermon is labeled hate speech by YouTube, right? Why? Because just because Pastor John MacArthur said that God made us male and female. Is Pastor MacArthur's sermon below really a hate speech? It's part of his sermon. You can see it. There is no such thing as transgender, quoted from him. You are either XX or XY, talking about chromosome. That's it. God made man male and female. That is determined genetically, that is physiology, that is science, that is reality. On the one hand, the reality of that lie and deception, talking about the LGBTQ stuff, okay, is so damaging, so destructive, so isolating, so corrupting that it needs to be confronted. But on the other hand, that confrontation can't exaggerate what already exists, which is a sense of feeling isolated in relationships. You can see here, right here. Too bad that you cannot find it anymore in YouTube, because it's already deleted, because it's considered hate speech. But what do you think about this speech? Is it really a hate speech? It's just because Pastor MacArthur isn't pro LGBTQ. That's the only reason I can get. And this is the fact. Canada's Bill C4 could ban biblical teachings on sexual ethics and might even limit personal communications on the subject. As a result, preachers are protesting the law at the pulpits. And now this is what's going on, in America right there, with 4,000 pastors affirming their opposition as well. So Pastor John MacArthur is not alone. He has like 4,000 pastors also together with him. And he's quoted from foxnews.com. 1,000 churches raise alarm, scope new Canadian conversion therapy ban, because it is possible that in the near future that biblical teachings on sexual ethics, talking about the difference or the teachings of the Bible about genders, about LGBTQ, and those kinds of teachings are going to be banned. Right? So that's why the pastors right now, they are in one voice opposing that idea. Brother and sister, Revelation 21 verse 8. But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. And again, I didn't say that. The scriptures, obviously say that. So here you can see not only the murderers. Last week we talked about thou shalt not commit murder, right? But now we're talking about the sexually immoral. You can find right there. So if you and I, we have something against God, which is we cannot control our body, and we commit adultery, we don't belong to heaven. We belong to hell. And not only that, as what we learned earlier, that the adultery starts in our heart, in our mind. When we look at other people lustfully, that's the moment when we break the commandment. So that's why Jesus condemns hypocrisy. And in the same way, we have to be very careful with the way we think about others. Conclusion. The only sex that is allowed according to the Bible, remember, brother and sister, is the marital sex between a man and a woman. That is the only sex that is allowed in the scriptures. Marital sex between a man and a woman. Those two people must be married first before doing that. And the second conclusion is non-marital sex, sex without getting married, is biblically considered immoral sexual. Okay, immoral sexual. And that includes, as what we learned together before, adultery, right? When we sleep with someone else's husband or wife, fornication, right? Even when we are single, we don't sleep with someone else's wife or husband. But if we haven't got married and we live together, that's so incorrect. Cohabitation, similar to fornication, promiscuity, have so many sexual partners, polygamy, polyandry, have one man and many wives, or one wife and many husbands, and similar sexual relationships apart from the marital sex between, listen carefully, brother and sister, a single man and a single woman. So remember, one single man, one single woman, they got united, okay, in marriage, and that's the only acceptable sexual relationship in the Bible. Not one and two, not two and one, or not before getting married. The third point, don't think you are strong enough against this kind of temptation. Stay away from it. Learn from Joseph, the man of God. Okay? Another thing is same-sex marriage is obviously, brother and sister, is obviously against the scriptures. Okay? Last but not least, we are warned to stay away from pornography because its purpose is totally against God's will. What is its purpose? To make us aroused, to make us excited sexually. But the Bible teaches us what? God teaches us to flee from our worldly sexual desire, right? In fact, that is how the world teaches us sexual immorality. How? By pornography. That's why we have child pornography, teen pornography in the United States. When you become 18 years old and you can just go to pornography like production house, and after that you can sell your body there. God forbid. That's not the way it is. Your body and my body, all of us, our body is a temple of God, so we have to be very careful, because the moment when we do sexual immorality, that's the moment when we make the temple of God dirty. And God is not going to underestimate that kind of sin. In fact, God is going to be really wrathful. And as what we have seen right here, Revelation 21, verse 8, those kind of people will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. Forget about what we have done in the past, brothers and sisters. Now it's time for us to change, to repent, because our body is the temple of God. So we have to highly respect our bed, highly respect the marriage, highly respect God, who gives us this special thing to be highly considered when we get married. But before that, no. And when we get married already, remember, your body only belongs, apart from God, only belong to your partner. And that's it. Hopefully it will help us to understand about this seventh commandment. And it's time for us to have discussion. If you have any insights, feel free to share with us. Or if you have any questions, you can do that too.